Hi, everyone. Today we are here with Austin Tyler. He is Provincetown's resident Halloween expert. He always does an incredible job on costumes and decoration and everything all around town. So thank you so much for joining us here today.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here.
Today we are counting down Austin's picks for the top 5 LGBT horror movies that are must-sees. But before we get to that, we're going to talk a little about Austin. So how long have you been in town?
I've now lived in Provincetown for 6 years.
Work.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's a good time.
What keeps you here?
Just how weird you're allowed to be and get away with it. I mean, the casual costume stuff, the jokes, the crazy shows, it's life for me.
I love that. That's almost everyone's answer when I ask them that. You specifically love Halloween costumes, and Halloween's your thing, horror is your thing, which is exactly why we invited you here today.
Well, thank you so much. It's an opportunity to test the adrenaline and get freaked out in a safe environment, which is why I go with the horror movies.
Definitely. Okay, let's take it away. Top 5 LGBT horror movies.
The reason I chose Sleepaway Camp is because despite it coming out at the height of 80s camp, it actually addresses a lot of really amazing themes about homosexuality, transgenderism, trans identity, the circumstances of upbringing and how that can affect people. So there's no lying. It is very homophobic. It is very transphobic. It's very just guys bashing on guys and just stereotypical gender roles. But this is a very important and significant exploration of trans existence in a mainstream media, in this case being horror. So this one is one of those summer camp murder scenes of who done it. So of course, as soon as Friday the 13th came out, everything was at a summer camp. This is along those lines, but a very, very unique twist.
Cool.
So the reason I chose Seed of Chucky for my number 4 is because it has a really unique method of sort of exploring and announcing gender non-binary living. So what we have is Chucky, the murderous doll, and Tiffany, the other murderous doll, who go about their life doing their thing, and it ends up that they have a child. The child is actually born with standard doll parts, so it is not anatomically correct. And because of this, the child has to suss out its own identity and where it lies on the spectrum. And they do it in a zany way without completely being offensive. There's a few, pot shots and what have you. But overall, it's not done in a terribly derogatory method to say that there are individuals who don't ascribe one way or the other.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so my number 3 pick is definitely the Babadook.
Interesting.
Accidental gay icon.
Right.
So this comes from an internet situation where Netflix had an algorithm error where the Babadook, a horror film, landed in the LGBTQ viewing section of Netflix. So then, of course, the internet took it and ran. So the Babadook has to do with sort of a boogeyman type creature that is the personification of all of this woman's grief, fear, doubts, and anxiety. The metaphor that was taken from the Babadook is that he wears a tall black hat, so fancy dress. He lives in a basement. What gay at some point hasn't? And he's at odds with family.
Sounds like a gay person to me.
So from there, the internet took it and made him in a long-term relationship with Pennywise the clown from It. And it's just taken on a life of its own. So although the movie itself isn't explicitly LGBTQ, finding that metaphor and parallel between Babadook and the gay experience is kind of an awesome time. Yeah. So my number 2 pick is a brutal French film called High Tension. In this film, it's a pair of girls come back from college break, and as they are enjoying some peace and quiet from school, they're hunted down by a violent and vile murderer. As it moves forward with the story, you realize it's a really interesting critique about female sexual repression, the avoidance and prevention of lesbian relationships, and really just talks and illustrates a lot about the psychological strain associated with female-to-female relationships and a lot of societal sort of pressures. Now, again, this one is a brutal film, both visually and as far as content. So I couldn't say, oh, go, it's a fun little Halloween treat. But it definitely explores some really interesting and really intense themes around female sexuality.
But comes with some gore.
Oh, God, does it ever. It's something.
I'm into that.
So my number one gayest of the gay, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. So this movie has everything. It's got the 80s camp, it's got the not so subtle metaphors, and it actually features one of the world's first documented male scream queens.
No way.
Oh, absolutely. So instead of having a young woman running from Freddy, you have a young man trying to be possessed by Freddy. Now, this is actually labeled one of the gayest horror movies of all times. Maybe at the time, not knowingly,
Right.
but there's a lot of male on male and male bro relationships. For example, when our lead, played by Mark Patton, Jesse, is presented with the option to go with the female friend or the male friend, he kind of leaves the girl in the dirt and always goes for the guy. I'm telling you. Now, this movie came out sort of at the peak of the HIV/AIDS crisis. So there's very particular lines in this film with a lot of impact, such as, help me, he's trying to get into my body. And so, along with the gym teacher being strung up and bear whipped with towels, naked, it's
Kinky.
and pretty gay. What's fascinating too is right after the lead actor Mark Patton had finished this film, he had been an aspiring Hollywood star, disappeared. And it's because at that time, it wasn't a good idea to be an out gay actor. And so within the last 2 years, I believe it was, a documentary was made by Tyler Jensen and Roman Kimianti called Scream Queen, following Mark Patton's life journey, sort of making peace with what happened and getting some explanations. So essentially, he found one of the writers and made him fess up that this was a gay film, and it was sort of hanging Mark as a person and an actor out to dry.
Oh.
So you don't just get the one movie, you get one for free, 6
Right.
bonus. But the documentary is super engaging, deeply intelligent, and just really helps explore what it was like to try to be a gay actor in a very anti-gay industry at the time.
Right. Really interesting.
But I'm telling you, that pool party scene and, oh God, Jesse's dance scene. YouTube it. If you do nothing else this Halloween, YouTube Jesse's dance scene from Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. My number one pick for must-see LGBT
That's
horror.
the number one pick from the number one pick.
Oh, the number one.
Perfect.
111 all over the place.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Austin. That was really informative. I can't wait to screen all of those movies throughout this weekend in celebration of Halloween when I'm not running around in a jockstrap or something. Who knows?
Fair point.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.